I married the woman of my dreams, and then found out she was my half-sister. It started the way all great love stories do, by accident. I wasn't supposed to be at that wedding. It was a last-minute invite, a friend of a friend thing. I almost didn't go. I had a work trip lined up, and honestly, I hate weddings. The forced smiles, the emotional speeches that never quite land, the overpriced food. But something pulled me there that day, and there she was, standing by the open bar, wearing this soft sea-green dress that clung to her in all the right places. Her hair was tied back like she hadn't tried, and somehow that made her even more striking. She laughed at something the bartender said, and I swear, I forgot how to breathe for a second. I don't even remember walking over to her. One second I was frozen, the next I was beside her, saying something dumb like, "You look like you belong in a movie." She tilted her head and smiled. Not in the flirty, fake way. In this quiet, curious way, like she was deciding whether or not I was worth her time. Apparently, I was. We talked for hours, about books, travel, bad wedding playlists. Her name was Ellie. She was from Oregon. Worked in nonprofit law. Fierce. Smart. Funny in this dry, sarcastic way that kept me on my toes. We were the last two people at the wedding, still sitting by the now empty dance floor, shoes off, talking about the weirdest things, regret, parallel universes, whether fate was a real thing or just coincidence dressed up in poetry. That night ended with a kiss. And the next morning, I booked a flight to Oregon. For the first few weeks, we didn't even label it. We were just pulled to each other. She came to visit me in Seattle. I drove to her place the following weekend. I remember the first time she fell asleep on my chest. I didn't move for hours, afraid I'd break the spell. And man, did it feel like a spell. We fell fast. And we fell hard. There was this weird sense of familiarity with her. Like I already knew her before I met her. Her laugh, her quirks, even the way she flipped her pen when she was thinking. It all felt too specific to be random. I told myself it was chemistry. I told myself this was what it felt like when you finally met your person. We moved in together after 6 months. Everyone said we were crazy. Too fast, too soon. But when you know, right? And with Ellie, I knew. We got married a year later. Small ceremony. Just close friends. She wore this off-white dress that made my chest physically ache. When she walked toward me down that forest path, all I could think was, I will never love anyone this much again. I meant every word of my vows. And when she said hers, she was crying so hard I had to hold her steady. Everyone said it was the most emotional wedding they'd ever been to. If only they knew. The real story hadn't even started yet. It happened 2 weeks after the honeymoon. We were back in Seattle, unpacking boxes, combining old photos and family heirlooms onto one bookshelf. Ellie pulled out this old black and white picture of a man in a military uniform. "That's my dad," she said. I froze. Because I had seen that face before. Not in passing. Not just in someone else's home. That face had lived in the bottom drawer of my mother's bedroom for years. I'd asked about him once, when I was 12. She said his name was Charles. That he was gone. Nothing else. I reached for the photo, trying to play it cool. "What was his name?" "Charles," she said. "Charles Whitman. He passed away before I was born." I felt my entire body go cold. That name, that face, that same half-smile. I excused myself, said I had a headache, locked myself in the bathroom, and pulled out my phone. Dug through old emails, scanned through photos I'd taken as a teenager. It took 20 minutes to find the one I was looking for. Side by side, the same man. Same ears. Same chin. Same creases around the eyes. I stared at the photos until my hands started shaking. There's no way, right? There couldn't be. I needed answers. I needed the truth. But the truth doesn't knock politely. It doesn't wait until you're ready. It shatters the lock and kicks the door in. And what I learned next destroyed everything. You ever have one of those moments where reality just blinks? Where everything you thought was solid suddenly feels like glass, and you're standing there, wondering if you imagined the whole damn thing. That was me, staring at 2 nearly identical photos of the man who might be my father, and her father too. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Ellie was curled up beside me, breathing soft and steady. I watched her chest rise and fall, wondering how the hell I was supposed to tell her that we might share more than a last name. That we might share blood. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. There had to be more than one Charles Whitman in the world, right? Military guy, generic face, common name. It wasn't impossible. But deep down I knew. I knew. The next morning, I called my mom. I hadn't talked to her much since the wedding. She'd said she was happy for me, but something about her tone always felt tight, like she was holding something back. Now I understood why. When she answered, I didn't bother with small talk. "Mom," I said, "I need you to be honest with me." Silence. Then, "About what?" "You told me my father's name was Charles Whitman." Another pause, then a sigh that sounded like it carried 20 years of regret. "Yes," she said. "Why?" I took a deep breath. "Because I just married his daughter." Dead. Silence. And then, softly, "Oh God." That's when I knew. No need for DNA tests. No need for family trees or birth records. The truth had just fallen out of her mouth like a broken wine glass. "You knew?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You knew? And you didn't stop me?" "I didn't know," she whispered. "Not for sure. I didn't even know he had another child. We lost touch after you were born. He didn't want anything to do with me." "So you guessed," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. "You saw her face, heard her name, and you thought maybe, but you still said nothing." "I thought it couldn't be," she said, her voice cracking. I told myself it was impossible. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, but I couldn't make a sound. My hands were numb. "You should have told me." "I didn't want to lose you," she said. "Not after everything." But she already had. I hung up without saying goodbye. When I walked back into the bedroom, Ellie was brushing her hair in the mirror. She smiled at me through the reflection. "Morning," she said, and my heart shattered all over again. I didn't tell her. Not yet. I couldn't. Because how do you even begin to say that? How do you tell the person you just vowed to spend your life with that there's a chance your lives were built on a lie? That night, I went through every piece of paperwork we had. Birth certificates, hospital records, anything that could tell me more. Her mother had died when she was 12. Cancer. She'd always said her dad died before she was born, but there were no photos of him past the age of 35. Nothing recent. No extended family. I found an old letter, buried in one of her memory boxes. It was from her mom to Charles, dated 3 months before Ellie was born. It said, "You don't get to disappear. She's yours too." I sat there, staring at that line, as the room seemed to tilt sideways. She's yours too. There it was. Proof. Ellie and I were half-siblings. My stomach turned. My skin felt too tight. And I realized something awful. I was still in love with her. Even after everything. Even knowing what I knew now. That terrified me more than anything. I stayed up all night again. Watched her sleep. Watched the woman I loved. The woman who should have been just my wife, not my sister. And then I remembered something. A detail she once mentioned in passing. How her mom had been in Seattle briefly before moving to Oregon. The timeline lined up too perfectly. Everything did. And the walls kept closing in. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made coffee, burned the toast, pretended I hadn't just discovered the biggest secret of my life. Ellie walked into the kitchen, yawning, wrapped in my old hoodie. She leaned against the counter, looked at me with sleepy eyes. "You okay?" she asked. I opened my mouth. No words came out. I couldn't do it. Not yet. So I lied. Just tired. But inside, I was breaking apart. And as I watched her stir sugar into her coffee, I had one horrifying, sickening thought. What if she already knew? I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something too. Ellie had this habit. Tiny, almost unnoticeable. She'd rub the inside of her thumb with her other hand when she was nervous. I'd only ever seen her do it once before, at our wedding, just before the vows. Now she was doing it again. Every morning. Every night. Just this subtle little motion like she was trying to wipe something away. I watched it from across the kitchen. She didn't know I noticed. She never knew how much I noticed. That's the thing about living with someone, really loving someone. You learn their silences just as much as their words. You read their sighs, track their glances, count the seconds they pause before answering a simple question. And Ellie had started pausing a lot. I'd ask how her day was. She'd smile too fast, too wide, like someone who was practicing the answer, not living it. It made my skin itch. I wanted to ask her outright. "Do you know who your father was? Did your mom ever tell you?" But every time I got close, something in me locked up. Because if I said the words out loud, there'd be no coming back. Instead, I started digging. I went online, searched for old addresses. Found a listing from 1992, her mother's apartment in Seattle, 2 blocks from where my mom worked at the time. I didn't even realize I was crying until I saw a tear fall on my keyboard. My mind kept looping the same thought. She's my sister. I married my sister. But the deeper terror, the part one didn't want to admit, even to myself, was that I still wanted her. Still loved her. Still dreamed about her fingers laced with mine. Her laugh echoing down the hallway. And that made me feel like a monster. The guilt twisted in my stomach like barbed wire. I started avoiding her without realizing it. Working late, going for walks, pretending to be asleep when she came to bed. Ellie noticed. Of course she did. One night, she sat beside me on the couch, turned off the TV, and just looked at me. That look. Soft. Searching. Scared. Are you okay? She asked. I nodded. Lied again. She didn't push. Just leaned her head against my shoulder. And I sat there, stiff, aching, wishing I could rewind time and unknow everything I'd found. But fate wasn't done yet. Because that weekend, Ellie found the letter. The one I thought I'd hidden. I came home from the grocery store and found her sitting on the edge of our bed, holding the envelope. Her eyes were red. Her voice was thin. Why do you have this? I didn't answer. She held up the paper, her mother's handwriting, those words etched in pen like a scar. You don't get to disappear. She's yours too. Ellie stared at me. Where did you get this? I couldn't lie. Not now. Not with the truth humming between us like a live wire. I found it while unpacking, I said. I wasn't snooping. Her voice cut through mine. You thought I knew. And that was when it hit me. She didn't know. Everything in her face cracked open in that moment. Her confusion, her fear, it wasn't guilt. It was raw, disoriented grief. She really had no idea. Ellie, I whispered. We need to talk. Her body went still. And I told her everything. Every piece of it. My mom. The photo. The name. The matching timelines. Her mother's letter. The truth I had carried like a blade in my chest for the past week. When I was done, the silence was so thick I could barely breathe. Ellie didn't cry. She just whispered, You're wrong. I wanted her to be right. I needed her to be right. But she grabbed the letter again, read it 3 more times like the words might rearrange themselves into something else. Something safe. Something that didn't change the entire shape of our lives. Then she stood up, walked out of the room, and didn't come back. That night, I sat alone on the floor beside our bed, staring at the wedding photos still on her nightstand. Us in that forest. Her smiling through tears. Me staring at her like she was everything. And I realized I might have just lost the only person I ever truly loved. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Because the next morning, Ellie came back holding a folder full of documents from her mother's old storage trunk. Birth certificates, hospital records, old letters. And at the bottom of the stack, a photo. A baby, newborn, held in the arms of the same man who fathered me. Ellie placed it in my hand. Her voice trembled. It's dated May 3rd, 1993. I stared at the photo. My birthday was March 12th. Ellie was born just 2 months later. Same father. Different mothers. Different cities. But no doubt left. And then she said the words that froze the blood in my veins. My mom knew. She looked at me, eyes hollow. She knew we were related. And she never said a word. I used to think betrayal felt like fire. But this was ice. Cold. Silent. Creeping under your skin and numbing everything it touched. Ellie sat across from me at the dining table, the photo still between us like a crime scene. Her fingers hovered just above it, but she didn't touch it again. Neither of us did. She knew. She repeated, softer this time. All these years, she knew. I didn't ask how she was sure. The way her voice cracked said more than facts ever could. Ellie had spent the night digging through boxes, old letters, medical forms, even voicemail tapes from her mom's answering machine. Most of it was junk. But one cassette had the dates scribbled on it in fading marker. June 93, Seattle. She played it for me. Shaky audio. Her mother's voice, clear as day. He came back for a minute. Said he missed me. Said he was done with that other woman. But I knew it was a lie. She was pregnant too. I could see it in his eyes. That was the moment everything shattered. We didn't speak for hours after that. Just sat in silence. Her knees pulled up to her chest. Me with my head in my hands. 2 people who thought they'd found their forever, realizing it had been a trap door the whole time. When the sun started creeping through the blinds, she finally said something. So what now? I didn't have an answer. I didn't even have a thought. I wanted to scream. Punch something. Rip the walls down. But none of that would change what we were. What we are. Half siblings. And married. I tried to say, we'll figure it out. but the words caught in my throat and stayed there like splinters. Instead, I stood up and walked into the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face until my reflection blurred. When I came out, Ellie was gone again. Her keys were missing. Her bag too. I didn't chase her. I couldn't. Not until I figured out what I even wanted. Because the truth? A part of me still didn't want to let her go. God, I know how that sounds. But when you've built a life with someone, when every morning, every cup of coffee, every inside joke and bad dance move belongs to them, you don't just erase that. You can't, even when you're supposed to. I spent the next 2 days in a fog. Didn't go to work. Didn't eat. Just sat there, staring at the ring she left on the nightstand. A little silver band. Nothing fancy, but it felt heavier than the whole world now. Then the email came. No subject line. No body text. Just a scanned image. A paternity test. Ellie had done it. She tracked down one of Charles's old hospital files. Compared it to our records. Matched the DNA markers. 98.7%. It was real. Undeniable. She didn't send a message. Didn't add a note. Just attached the truth like a final nail in the coffin. I stared at it for what felt like hours. And then I called my mom again. I needed answers. Real ones this time. No half-truths. No dodging. She answered on the second ring. "Hi," she said, like nothing had happened. I didn't say hello. I didn't ask how she was. I just said, "You lied to me. You lied to us." There was a long pause. Then she whispered, "She found out." Of course she did. Because I did the work you should have done 20 years ago. Her breath caught. She tried to explain, spinning excuses, how Charles disappeared, how she didn't know he had another family, how she never imagined we'd meet, let alone get married. I said, cutting her off. Fall in love. Build a life. What exactly didn't you imagine, Mom? She went silent again. And then, with a voice so soft I almost missed it, she said, "I tried to stop it. At the wedding. That's why I sat in the back. I was hoping. I don't know. Hoping it wasn't true. You sat there and watched me marry my sister." She didn't deny it. I hung up. And this time, I knew I'd never call her again. That night, I heard the front door open. It was Ellie. Her eyes were bloodshot. Hair tangled. She looked like she hadn't slept since she left. She didn't speak at first. Just walked over to the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down across from me. Then she finally said the words I was too afraid to say first. "I still love you." And it broke me. Because I did too. But the next thing she said tore what little was left of me apart. "I think I'm pregnant." When she said it, "I think I'm pregnant," it didn't feel real. The room went quiet in a way I've never felt before. Not silent, just hollow. Like the walls had swallowed the air and left nothing behind but a pulse in my ears. Ellie looked at me, lips slightly parted, eyes brimming but not spilling. She wasn't crying. Not yet. Not until she saw what I would do. And all I could do was stare. Pregnant. With my child. Our child. A baby neither of us had planned. And God help us, neither of us could have imagined would carry a truth this dark. My voice cracked when I finally spoke. "How long have you known?" She swallowed hard. "A few days. I bought a test the morning I found the letter." "Did you take it?" She nodded. "Positive. I have an appointment next week." To confirm. Her words landed like bricks. One after the other. Just enough space between them to catch your breath before the next hit. I didn't know what to say. No, that's not true. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. That it didn't change how I felt. That I'd love that child with every part of me, just like I still, somehow, loved her. But I couldn't say it. Because everything in me was folding in on itself. My thoughts were spiraling fast. What would people say? What would happen if someone found out? Would we go to prison? Would the child be taken away? Would they think we were freaks, monsters, criminals? Would we think that about ourselves? I felt the panic start to rise. My throat tightened. I stood up too fast, knocking the chair backward. Ellie didn't flinch. Just sat there, still as glass. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't plan this. I didn't ask for any of it." And somehow that hurt more. Because neither did I. But life doesn't care about your plans. Life hands you matches and gasoline, then waits to see if you run or light the fuse. I paced the living room, trying to breathe, trying to think. Ellie stayed where she was, her hands folded over her stomach. Not protectively. Not yet. Almost like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to touch it. I stopped moving and looked at her. Really looked. She was still the woman I married. Still the girl who made fun of my cooking and danced barefoot in our hallway. Still the person who made me believe in fate, even when I'd sworn off the idea. But now, she was something else too. She was my sister, and the mother of my child. My voice broke again. Do you want to keep it? Ellie blinked. I don't know. That was honest. Brutally, painfully honest. And I respected her for not pretending to have it figured out. I walked over and sat back down, slower this time. What do we even do? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Just stared at her hands like they might reveal a map. Some miracle route out of the mess we'd fallen into. Then she said something I'll never forget. I know what we are now, but I also know what we were before we found out. I nodded slowly, feeling the ache in every part of me. We were good, I whispered. We were real. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want this to be the end of us, she said. I want to believe there's a version of our life that still makes sense. I wanted to believe that too. But belief doesn't always hold up under the weight of reality. And reality was knocking on our door. Because that night, just as the sun dipped below the horizon and the world outside turned quiet again, Ellie's phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. One sentence. I know what you are. She showed it to me without saying a word. My blood ran cold. We were being watched. Or followed. Or worse. Someone knew the truth. I read the message 4 times before I said a word. I know what you are. Not who. What. Like we were something unnatural. Ellie stared at me, her knuckles white around the phone. Do you think it's your mom? I shook my head. No. She wouldn't be this subtle. The number was unlisted. No name. Just a black hole of digits and a single line that felt like it could burn the house down. We sat in silence, letting the weight of it sink in. The walls of our apartment, already closing in, suddenly felt like they had eyes. Whoever sent that message knew everything. I tried to steady my voice. Has anyone else seen the test? No, she said quickly. It's still in the drawer. And the paternity stuff? The DNA? She pointed to a folder on the bookshelf. Right there. I never sent it to anyone. Not even a friend. Not even your best friend. No, she said. Not even Rachel. Her voice cracked when she said that name. Like just the idea of her closest friend knowing made it more real. I grabbed the phone and started typing back. Who is this? Message failed. Number blocked. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just someone playing games. This was someone who didn't want to be found. I spent the next few hours tearing through everything. My email, her messages, our shared cloud storage, looking for any leak, any gap, any moment when the truth could have slipped through. Ellie disappeared into the bathroom and stayed there for over an hour. I could hear the sink running. Then silence. Then the sink again. It was like she was trying to drown her thoughts in cold water. When she finally came out, her face was pale. I booked the appointment, she said quietly. Tomorrow morning. I nodded. You want me to come? She hesitated. I think I need to do it alone. That stung more than it should have. But I understood. Sometimes shame makes you want to crawl into a hole so deep. Even the people who love you can't follow. We didn't sleep that night. I laid on the couch. She stayed in the bedroom. I stared at the ceiling, counting every breath, every second, every sound that wasn't her voice. And I kept hearing that message again and again in my head. I know what you are. Like someone out there had already decided what kind of people we were. Like they were ready to judge us without knowing the story. The before. The love. The truth. By morning, Ellie was already dressed. Baggy sweater. No makeup. Hair tied back like she wanted to disappear. She didn't say goodbye. Just nodded once as she closed the door. I sat there with my coffee, untouched, cold. Half an hour later, I got another message. Different number. Same voice. She deserves better. So does the baby. I dropped the mug. Ceramic exploded on the floor, coffee seeping into the rug like blood. Someone was watching her. Watching us. And they weren't just playing games anymore. They were threatening to make decisions for us. I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door, heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. I didn't know who I was looking for, but I knew where she'd be. The clinic was across town. I took every red light like it was green. When I got there, I saw her car in the parking lot. But no sign of her. Inside, the receptionist told me she'd already gone in. I sat in the waiting room, staring at the wall, until she finally came out. Her eyes met mine, and something inside them had changed. Not broken, but different. Like the part of her that still believed in happy endings had finally gone quiet. She didn't speak, just walked straight past me toward the exit. I followed her out. But the second we got to the car, she froze. Right there on the windshield was a note. No envelope. Just a single piece of paper, flapping in the wind. She picked it up with trembling hands. 2 words, written in thick black ink. End it. And scrawled beneath it a photo. One I'd never seen before. Me and Ellie. In our kitchen. Her in my arms. Laughing. Happy. Someone had been inside our home. I don't remember getting in the car. Don't remember the drive home. I just remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, and Ellie sitting beside me, silent, still holding that photo like it might catch fire at any second. Whoever this person was, they weren't just watching us. They were inside. They'd stood where we stood, walked through our life, touched the same doorknobs, breathed the same air, and left behind a message that felt more like a sentence. End it. Not a suggestion. A demand. Ellie didn't say a word the whole way back. She didn't have to. Her silence was a storm all its own. I unlocked the front door slowly, afraid of what I might find. Nothing looked out of place. No broken locks. No shattered windows. But somehow, everything felt wrong. The air was heavy. The floor creaked differently. Even the fridge hum sounded off. We checked the rooms together, wordlessly, like soldiers clearing a house after battle. Bedroom, closet, bathroom, all the same, all untouched, until we reached the kitchen and saw the second photo. This one was taped to the microwave. Clean, crisp. Another angle. Us on the couch, from behind. My arm around her waist. Her head on my shoulder. A perfect picture of something we weren't allowed to be. Ellie covered her mouth. I stood frozen. Because now it wasn't just fear. It was humiliation. Someone had seen us. In our most vulnerable, intimate moments. Not just physically, but emotionally. They'd witnessed our love and twisted it into something shameful. I grabbed the photo and tore it in half. It didn't help. Ellie sat down on the kitchen floor, arms around her knees. And for the first time since this whole thing started, she broke. She sobbed like she couldn't stop. Like the tears were years old, finally clawing their way out. I didn't ask for this, she cried. I didn't know. And I knelt beside her, holding her tight, whispering, neither did I. Neither did I. But there was no comfort in it. Only gravity. We were 2 people in freefall, clinging to each other as the world watched and waited for the crash. After the tears stopped, Ellie looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. We have to go. I didn't ask where. I just nodded. We packed fast. Essentials only. IDs. Cash. Phones off. Everything else stayed behind. Photos, clothes, memories. Our entire life, abandoned in a house that had been violated. Before we left, I scanned the doorframe, the vents, the light fixtures. That's when I found it. A tiny pinhole camera, hidden behind the smoke detector. My throat tightened. This wasn't just obsession. This was surveillance. Ellie saw it too. She didn't say anything. Just turned and walked out the door. We drove for hours. Took back roads. Changed directions twice. We ended up in a motel outside the city. A rundown place with flickering lights and wallpaper that peeled like dead skin. It was perfect. Anonymous. Forgettable. The kind of place no one would think to look for 2 people trying to disappear. Ellie curled up under the blanket without speaking. I sat in the chair by the window, watching the shadows move across the parking lot. And I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Who would do this? Not just threaten us, but watch us. Photograph us. Invade our home. Control our choices. That kind of hate, that kind of precision, doesn't come from strangers. It comes from someone close. Someone who thinks they're protecting something. Ellie stirred under the blanket. Do you think it's your mom? No, I said. She doesn't know where we live. I never gave her the address. What about Rachel? Ellie's voice cracked when she said it. Her best friend. Her ride or die since high school. I don't know, she whispered. She was weird after the wedding. Kept asking about your last name. Your family. You ever tell her? No, she said quickly. God, no. I never said anything. We sat in silence again. But a new fear had settled in the room now. What if someone else put it together? Not from us, but from photos, documents, timelines, names. What if someone connected the dots? What if they decided they had to stop us? I turned on my phone. 1 bar of service. Just enough to receive a single voicemail. No number. Just a voice. Distorted. Untraceable. And all it said was, if you don't end it, I will. If you don't end it, I will. I played the message 3 times. Each time, it hit harder. Not because of the words, but the tone. It wasn't rage. It wasn't desperation. It was calm. collected, certain. The voice of someone who had already made their decision and was just waiting for me to understand mine didn't matter anymore. I showed it to Ellie. She listened once, then whispered, "They're serious." Yeah, they were. We weren't dealing with someone unstable. This wasn't a dramatic ex or a bitter relative airing secrets online. This was personal, surgical, like someone who thought they were on a mission. "Do we go to the police?" she asked. I almost laughed. "What do we say?" "Hi. We accidentally married each other, and now someone's stalking us because of it. You really think they'll help?" She looked down, said nothing, because we both knew the truth. There's no box for what we were, no form to check, no code for. I fell in love with someone who shares my blood and didn't know until it was too late. The law doesn't understand that kind of heartbreak. The internet sure as hell doesn't. People don't want your story. They want your shame. So we stayed quiet and waited. 2 days passed. We didn't leave the motel, barely spoke. We existed like shadows, afraid to turn the lights on, afraid to sleep too deeply. The only thing louder than the silence was the weight of what we hadn't decided. The baby. Ellie hadn't said anything since that day at the clinic. She hadn't scheduled a follow-up, hadn't even touched her stomach. I watched her one night as she stared out the window, her profile glowing in the orange light from the parking lot. "You don't have to decide yet," I said. She turned to me slowly. "That's the problem, isn't it?" "What is?" "No matter what I choose, I lose something." I didn't argue, because she was right. If she kept the baby, she'd have to carry a truth so heavy it might crush her. Face the looks, the questions, the judgment. If she didn't, she'd lose a part of us we didn't even know existed yet. There was no version of this where we won. And then, like the universe wasn't done punishing us, her phone lit up again. Another message. This one had a video. A short clip. Ellie opened it with shaking hands. It was our wedding, not the official footage, not the stuff we'd shared with friends. It was raw, blurry, shot from behind a tree. Someone had been there, filming us, listening to our vows, our I do's, our kiss. We both watched it in silence, breathless. Then the screen went black and 4 words appeared in white text. "You didn't stop it." I couldn't breathe, because now I understood what this really was. This wasn't about disgust, or morality, or some twisted sense of justice. This was punishment. Someone believed we deserved to suffer, and they weren't going to stop until we did. That night, I barely slept. I kept watch while Ellie lay curled beneath the thin motel blanket, her body trembling even in dreams. At 3:14 a.m., I heard footsteps outside. Not many, just one set. Slow, intentional. I peeked through the blinds. A figure in a hood, just standing across the lot, watching our room. Then, they held up a phone. The screen was lit. Live video, streaming us. Ellie, me, our motel number in full view. And just before they turned to leave, they held up a sign, Sharpie on cardboard. 3 words. "The world's watching." And I realized something I'd been too scared to say out loud. This isn't just blackmail anymore. It's a countdown. The countdown had started. We didn't know how long we had. Days, hours, maybe minutes. But it was clear now. Whoever was behind this didn't want money. They didn't want attention. They wanted destruction. And they were patient. Ellie and I sat side by side on the motel bed, the glow of her phone screen lighting both our faces. The live stream was still up. Hundreds of viewers. Dozens of comments. Some confused. Some cruel. Some threatening. And every few seconds, a new message. "Is this real? This is disgusting. She's pregnant? Burn them." I felt bile rise in my throat. "They're turning it into a spectacle," Ellie whispered. Because that's what we were now. Not people. Not a story. Just content. We weren't a couple with a tragedy. We were entertainment. Something for people to gawk at between their morning coffee and afternoon meetings. And I knew, if we didn't stop it, it would only get worse. "I need to know who it is," I said, standing. "I need to end this." Ellie reached for my hand. "And if it's someone we know?" I paused, because that's what scared me most. It wasn't some stranger behind a screen. It was someone with access. Someone close enough to know our timeline, our address, our habits. A family member. A friend. Someone who once sat at our dinner table. I started tracing every name in my mind. Who we'd told. Who we didn't. Who might have guessed. And one name kept surfacing. Rachel. Ellie's best friend. The one who had been off since the wedding. Who kept asking questions. Who posted suspiciously vague captions right around the time the photos started appearing. I need her phone, I said. We need to check her location. Ellie hesitated. If I call, she'll know something's up. Then don't call. We drove into the city, ditched the car 4 blocks away, and walked to Rachel's building. She lived in a modern high-rise with a doorman who barely looked up when we passed. Ellie still had her spare key. The apartment was dark, quiet, but inside, a wall of monitors, 3 laptops, a tablet, phones on the desk, plugged in like weapons being recharged. And there, in the center of the desk, was a binder, labeled with my name. Inside, printouts, photos, screenshots, handwritten notes, our wedding, our DNA results, Ellie's pregnancy test, everything. She'd documented it all, like a detective or a stalker. I felt Ellie go still beside me, her breathing shallow. On the wall was a pinned headline mock-up. Seattle couple unknowingly marries. Pregnancy reveals family secret. Beneath it, in Rachel's handwriting, viral gold. Monetize the breakdown. Leak, then launch. I wanted to scream. Rip the monitors off the wall. Burn the whole place down. But Ellie's voice stopped me. She was planning to ruin us. Not just expose. Exploit. Monetize. Profit off our shame. Our confusion. Our pain. We backed out of the apartment and returned to the car, both of us in shock. I don't remember who spoke first. Probably her. Probably just a whisper of disbelief. She said she loved me like a sister. I couldn't even respond. I was too busy wondering how much time we had before the rest of the world caught up. Because if Rachel had this much, she'd save the worst for last. And right then, Ellie's phone buzzed again. AirDrop request. From Rachel's iPad. 1 file. No name. Just a video preview. Of Ellie. In the clinic. Alone. Terrified. Waiting for her appointment. The caption said, "She's still lying to you." I looked at her. She looked at me. Neither of us spoke the question aloud, but it was loud enough in our eyes. What else don't we know about each other? And before I could ask, Ellie whispered, "I never went in." "I never went in," Ellie whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word like it hurt to say it out loud. We were parked in silence, the glow of her phone screen still casting flickers across her face. She wouldn't look at me, just stared straight ahead, like if she met my eyes, the entire truth would finally come crashing through. "You didn't go into the clinic," I repeated. She shook her head. "I told you I did because I needed you to believe I was strong enough to deal with it." My breath caught. "Are you still pregnant?" She nodded. Barely. Like the movement itself scared her. 1,000 thoughts hit me at once. Guilt, fear, relief, all tangled into a knot that tightened every time I tried to breathe. I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the same woman I married. And I wasn't the same man. We'd both been torn apart and put back together with trembling hands and lies we thought were necessary. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said, "because I didn't know what I wanted. Part of me hoped something would happen to decide for me." "You mean Rachel?" She finally met my eyes. I didn't think it was her. Not until now. And now that we knew, we had to make a choice. We couldn't hide anymore. Couldn't keep running motel to motel, waiting for the next threat, the next leak, the next live stream to put us on a digital guillotine. Ellie took a deep breath. "We go to her." "Rachel." She nodded. No more running. No more letting her control the story. I didn't argue. Not this time. We drove back into the city just after midnight. Her building was still lit. Of course it was. Rachel was always online. Always watching. Ellie went in alone. I waited in the car, heart pounding. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Then the door opened. And Rachel walked out first. Her expression? Smug. Cold. Victorious. But what she didn't see, what she couldn't see, was that Ellie was recording. Everything. She'd hit record the second she stepped inside. And Rachel, cocky as ever, confessed to it all. The cameras. The leaks. The live streams. She even said the words, "You two deserve to burn for what you did. And I'm the one lighting the match." And that was enough. Enough to prove intent. Enough to prove premeditation. Enough to bury her. By morning, we had lawyers. By afternoon, we had a restraining order. And by the end of the week, Rachel's devices were seized. Every file, every message, every photo, wiped from the internet by court order. Was it enough to erase what happened? No, but it was enough to reclaim our story. Enough to make the world pause long enough to listen. And so, we told the truth. Ellie and I stood together, side by side, and recorded a video. No clickbait. No sobbing theatrics, just raw honesty. We told the world how we met, how we fell in love, how we learned, too late, what connected us, and what it didn't change. We didn't ask for forgiveness. We didn't ask for understanding. We just asked for space. And against all odds, people listened. Some called us liars. Others called us brave. But for the first time since everything fell apart, we weren't hiding anymore. Ellie kept the baby. We moved out of the city, changed our names, started again in a place where no one knew what we'd been, only what we were. A couple, a family, a tragedy that chose love anyway. And when our daughter was born, I held her in my arms and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, the kind that says, maybe some stories aren't meant to make sense to everyone. Maybe some are only meant to be lived. Imperfect, unfinished, real.